welcome to BuildBytesDaily. Today we are tackling a really common but kind of tricky UI problem in Next.js, that awkward, silent pause right after a user clicks a link. We're going to look at a specific tool for this, the useLinkStatus hook. But what's even more important is figuring out when you should, and maybe when you shouldn't, actually use it. So let's dive in.
So just picture this for a second. Your user is cruising through this awesome app you've built. They see a link, maybe it's to a product page, they give it a click, and crickets. Nothing happens. For just a split second, or hey, maybe even a few seconds if their connection is slow, the screen is just frozen. It feels stuck. And that, my friends, is the awkward navigation silence, and it can really make an app feel janky.
I mean, from the user's point of view, that silence is just plain confusing. They're thinking, did my click even work? Is my internet down? Is this website just broken? And you know what they do next, right? They start clicking again and again, getting more and more frustrated. And for us, the developers, it's a little anxiety-inducing. We know the app is chugging away in the background, getting all the data ready for the next page, but the user has zero feedback. And that lack of communication, that's what we need to fix.
And this brings us to our first stop for a solution. Next.js actually gives us a specific tool designed for this exact scenario, a hook that's meant to give immediate feedback the second a link is clicked. So let's meet the useLinkStatus hook. And, at first glance, it really does seem like the perfect, simple fix for our problem.
So, what is this thing really? Well, the official docs say that useLinkStatus is a hook that tells you when a Next.js link is in a pending state. All that means is it's been clicked, but the new page content isn't quite ready yet. It's built specifically for creating these subtle, little inline bits of feedback, like a tiny spinner or a shimmer effect that pops up right next to the link they just clicked.
Okay, and one of the best things about this hook, it is just beautifully simple. You call useLinkStatus, and it gives you back an object with one single thing in it. Pending. That's it. This pending value is just a Boolean. It's true when the navigation is happening, and it flips to false once it's all done. Super clean, super simple, and really easy to work with.
And using it is just as easy. First, you just import it from next/link. Then you call it inside your component to get that pending state. Now, there's one crucial rule here. The component you use it in has to be a child of the link component you're trying to track. You can't just throw it anywhere. It needs that context so it knows which link status you're actually asking about. All right, so we've got our simple hook, problem solved, right? We can all go home. Well, not so fast. Here's the twist. While useLinkStatus is a totally valid tool, the Next.js team themselves kind of suggests that it might not be the first thing you should be reaching for. A lot of the time, it's actually just a band-aid for a deeper problem, and there are way more robust, more performant ways to handle your loading state. This quote right from the documentation, it says it all. The real goal in Next.js is for your navigations to be so screamingly fast that you don't even need a pending indicator in the first place. The docs pretty much frame useLinkStatus as a quick patch you can slap on when you find a slow transition, but your long-term goal, that should be to find the root cause of that slowness and fix it with better patterns like prefetching or using those awesome route-level loading UIs. Now, this is where things get really interesting because it really frames the two main approaches you can take. On one side, you've got the preferred method, a route-level fallback using a loading.js file. This is a super powerful feature that lets Next.js move to the new route instantly, showing a cool skeleton UI while the real content streams in behind the scenes. On the other side, useLinkStatus doesn't actually speed anything up. It just gives you a little visual hint during a navigation that is literally blocked. It's waiting for data before it can even start the transition. So, if loading.js is the gold standard, does useLinkStatus even have a place? Oh, absolutely. But you have to think of it as a tool for very specific surgical applications. It's not a hammer you use for every nail. It's more like a specialized screwdriver that you only pull out when very specific conditions are met. So let's nail down what those exact conditions are. Okay, this is your checklist. You should only reach for this hook when all of these things are true. Number 1, you've deliberately turned off prefetching on a link with prefetch equals false. 2, that link is pointing to a dynamic route. And 3, that dynamic route does not have its own loading.js file. If you hit that trifecta and you decide a little inline hint is better than a big full-page loader, then useLinkStatus is absolutely the perfect tool for the job. So now that we know exactly when to use it, let's talk about how to use it like a pro. Because believe it or not, a sloppy implementation can actually make the user experience worse, which is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do here. So there are two big UI traps you can fall into here. The The first is layout shift. That's when your loading indicator suddenly pops into existence and shoves all the other content around on the page. It's super jarring. The second is what I call the flash. If the navigation is actually super fast, like under 100 milliseconds, popping up a loading indicator for a split second is more distracting than it is helpful. It just feels like a visual bug. And this is just brilliant. It's an elegant solution provided right in the Next.js docs. To stop layout shift, you always render the indicator, but you just keep it invisible with opacity 0. To solve that flash, you add an animation delay of about 100 milliseconds. What this does is the indicator will only show up if the navigation is actually slow enough to need it. For those quick navigations, the whole thing finishes before the animation even has a chance to start. It's a simple, pure CSS trick that makes the UI feel so much more polished.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. We've looked at the problem, the simple solution, the better alternatives, and those pro-level implementation details. Now, let's just boil all of this down into a simple decision-making cheat sheet that you can use in your own projects.
So really, it all just comes down to choosing the right tool for the right job. If you're linking to a standard page that's prefetched, you do nothing. Next.js makes it feel instant right out of the box. If you're going to a dynamic page that has to fetch data, your best bet is to add a loading.js file. That gives you that instant transition to a skeleton UI. And finally, in that one very specific case where a link is slow because you turned off prefetching and you don't have a loading fallback, that's when you pull out useLinkStatus with that clever CSS delay trick for some subtle, polished feedback.
And that pretty much brings us to the end. The real takeaway here is to think about your loading states not as an afterthought, but as a core part of your app's design. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Take a look at your own projects. Where can you replace a jarring wait time with an instant skeleton UI or a subtle, well-timed loading hint? How are you going to refine your app's loading experience?
I really hope this deep dive into useLinkStatus was helpful for you. If you learned something new, do me a favor and hit that like button. And for more practical tips and explainers on modern web development, don't forget to subscribe to BuildBytesDaily. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.